We got a big one today. Today we're doing the tier list for all the cards in the Dream Chaser Hero expansion for the Lord of the Rings, the card game. This was going to be a lot longer than the last two tier lists I did. I already tried recording this once and my battery died on my microphone. First we're doing Tactics Heroes. This is Prince Imrahil. So this is the second version of Prince Imrahil that we got in the history of the Lord of the Rings card game, but he's the only hero Prince Imrahil in the reprinted stuff. We have Ally Prince Imrahil, so if you want Ally Prince Imrahil, you can't go with Hero Prince Imrahil. Nonetheless, Hero Prince Imrahil has a threat cost of 11 with 2 willpower, 3 attack, 2 defense, and 4 hit points. He's a Gondorian noble warrior, and that's a lot of traits, and that's going to be a necessary thing here. So he's got a combat action where you spend 1 resource from Prince Imrahil's resource pool to search the top 5 cards of your deck for an ally who shares at least 1 trait with him. So you got a lot of options there. You put that ally into play for 1 phase, not really a round, just a phase. You shuffle your deck, obviously, before and after so he comes in during the phase, and then you shuffle him back into your deck afterwards. So ideally, the way you want to use Prince Imrahil is you are spending resources from his resource pool, which are usually going to be tactics, unless you give him other resource icons. You're bringing other cards in for 1 cost of any strength for 1 phase at a time. So you're either going to do questing or you're going to do combat. You're probably going to do any of the other phases. That's sounds good on paper, right? So while that could work very well, especially if you have a lot of strong allies, the downsides of Prince Imrahil are a few. One is the conflicts with ally Prince Imrahil is very good. Not a lot of people still have the original Prince Imrahil for leadership, who I think is actually a better card here. You have that downside. You also have the downside of you're spending 1 resource every time you do this. You could get, like I said, a lot of benefit out of it, but using 1 resource every single round to do this effect takes away from resources that would spend to get them in there permanently. So this isn't something that you want to be too reliant on. And the other side is it's really a fiddly effect to keep track of, because you got to keep track of what phase. You got to leave at the end of phase instead of the end of round. So that's annoying to me. Prince Imrahil's in the C tier. He's the lesser of the Prince Imrahils, in my opinion. Naasia, the other tactics hero here. Naasia is an 8 threat cost tactics Corsair warrior hero. So 1 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, 4 health. Resources on Naasia's resource pool cannot be used to pay for allies. So they can only pay for attachments or events, or what we're about to talk about in a second. So while Naasia as an action is attacking or defending, you spend 1 resource from her resource pool to give her +1 attack or +1 defense. So here's when you use Naasia, is when you have an extra resource, an extra spot for a hero, and you don't know what to do with them. Because Naasia, being a Corsair, doesn't really have a lot of synergy. I don't know if she has like any synergy. She can't even pay for other allies. So it's just a battling hero, which she can be very strong in battling, but that's it. She's not a Harad hero, which I was hoping she would be when she was released, because Harad actually became a bit of an archetype. Naasia is in the D tier. The lack of synergies is a big deal for me, because there are so many synergies in the Lord of the Rings card game. That's how you do well in the game. Having her as the one-off thing, I don't really like it. Not a lot of redeeming qualities for Naasia, in my opinion. Círdan, the shipwright. If you're not used to it with Tolkien pronunciations, starting a word with C is usually the hard C. But Círdan is one of the strongest elves in Middle-earth at the time of the Lord of the Rings. He's got a threat cost of 12. He's a spirit hero. We're now into the spirit heroes. 4 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, 4 health. Noldor and Noble. You draw 1 additional card at the beginning of the resource phase. And then forced, after drawing cards at the beginning of the resource phase, you choose and discard 1 of those cards. Now that sounds less than optimal. You're drawing 2 cards but only to keep 1. Obviously it's better than 1 card, but you're still discarding a lot. Well, we're going to find, if you're not already familiar, Noldor needs to discard cards to work as a deck archetype. So you actually kind of want to do that. So Círdan is very strong quester, and Círdan also has an attachment that is really the Círdan attachment. We're not going to talk about it yet. I'm not going to give it a grade yet, but the other attachment is Narya, which is one of the rings of power. So Círdan was one of the 3 elves that had a ring of power. You had Elrond with Vilya and Galadriel with Nenya. And now you had Círdan with Narya, and they gave Narya to Gandalf. And Narya allows you to, instead of doing the regular stuff with Círdan in terms of questing, you instead exhaust Círdan to ready 2 other characters and make them stronger. So you have that option with Círdan. So that has to be considered for the rating for Círdan. And I'm putting Kiradon in the A tier. The only reason why I'm not putting him S tier is because he's very expensive, and when you use Narya, you can't use his 4 willpower, which is a little suboptimal. Kiradon's a really cool character, though. And also, he's kind of in the background of the last scene of Return of the King, or towards the end there. So he's actually in the movies. Besides that, though, still a very strong hero. One of the better Noldor heroes. I can't say that word right the first time ever. Cornerstone of most Noldor decks that he's a part of. Next up is Lanwin, also a spirit hero. Lanwin is a Dale scout, threat cost of 9 with 2 willpower, 3 attack, 1 defense, and 3 health. Lanwin is ranged, which is interesting. And as a response, after an encounter card with Surge is revealed, either ready Lanwin or give her +2 willpower at the end of the phase, and you do that twice. So Surge cards are the cards that force another encounter card out of the encounter deck. There's almost no redeeming quality to seeing the Surge keyword on a card. It's just bad. In fact, it's the one keyword I will try to avoid the most on encounter cards if I can. So having a character like Lanwin that can counteract Surge cards is very good. It almost kind of cancels out the Surge effect. So for some quests, that's going to be good. But Lanwin, despite being Dale, doesn't really do anything with Dale decks. Lanwin actually kind of came out before Dale decks were a thing. There's some synergies with Scouts, but not as much as Rangers or Dunedain, and she's not Dunedain. The ability to get the +2 willpower or be ready to use her ranged attack can be useful, but it's still kind of a weird combination. Lanwin is really, might as well have been like a Corsair too, again, because for the lack of Dale synergy. Lanwin's a C tier because she's another like solo hero. She's just like when you throw in there if you have some like a specific quest you deal with Surge cards are a problem. But besides that, you're not really going to use her. Next hero is Denethor. We're down to leadership here. So Denethor is a Gondor noble steward. Of course, he's a steward. 8 threat cost, 1 willpower, 1 attack, 3 defense, 3 life, just like Denethor from lore from the core set. During setup, you add 2 resources to Denethor's resource pool, and as an action, you move 1 resource from Denethor's resource pool to another Gondor hero's resource pool. Limit once per round. Double checking audio because I paid that price before. So Denethor actually might seem a little underwhelming at first, but actually fits a few things pretty well. 1, 2 resources in the beginning of the game is actually pretty important. Arguably the most important time to have resources is on turn 1, because you got 7 cards and usually only 3 resources total. There's a reason why when you play the game on easy mode, they give you an extra resource on each hero when you start the game off. So starting off with 2 allows you to start a lot faster and get ahead of the curve, against the deck you're battling against here. Then as an action, moving a resource from Denethor to another Gondor hero, that's something that's especially useful if you have Steward of Gondor, which everyone has in the core set, which gives you 2 resources per turn. It's a leadership card, and naturally you would put the Steward of Gondor on Denethor, who is this Steward of Gondor. So it allows you to then get, instead of 2 resources on just Denethor, you can spread them out. Denethor is in the A tier. I don't, like right there, just above, I think, Lord Denethor, my favorite Denethor hero. So yeah, it's actually very well tailored in the context of the game for the resource management. Like a very good resource hero. Maybe not as good as Thorin Oakenshield, but as far as the reprinted stuff, might be the best resource generating or resource managing hero. Next up is Elfhelm, the other leadership hero in the set here. We got a threat cost of 10, 2 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, and 4 health. Elfhelm is actually from Rohan. He's not an elf. He's a warrior scout. Elfhelm gives the bonuses of each spirit hero with an attached mount gets +1 willpower. Each tactics hero with a mount gets +1 attack, and each leadership hero with an attached mount gets +1 defense. Rohan rarely has anything to do with lore because Rohan is relatively new in the time of Middle Earth, so they didn't have enough time to write down enough stuff, I guess. So their lore stuff is kind of weak, but that's okay here. So Elfhelm is very good if you're going with, say, 2-handed Rohan, because you got a lot of mounts with Rohan. They like to ride their horses. They love their horses. So you can get a lot of bonuses here, because even just with single-handed, triggering each of those bonuses, if you can do that right away, that's as if he's a card that's like worth a threat cost of 13 because he gets +1 to each of those other traits there just to happen somewhere. So Elfhelm is very good, but you do need the mounts to do it for one character when you're playing single-handed, and it's tough here because I don't usually end up picking him for the first, like the top 3 Rohan. More important if you're going with 2 Rohan decks or more. So Elfhelm is in the A tier. He's like A minus. He's like right there. He's also a little bit inefficient with how his traits are laid out there. He'll usually be a defender, but so you don't need the attack and the willpower as much. So Elfhelm, yeah, A tier. Galdor of the Havens. Now we're into lore. Galdor is a Noldor hero. He's got 9 threat cost, 2 willpower, 2 attack, 1 defense, 4 health. You'll probably use him for questing. As a response, after drawing your setup hand, instead of taking a mulligan, you may discard any number of cards from your hand and draw that many cards. So you get to do the mulligan you do in Marvel Champions or Arkham Horror if you have Galdor. And arguably that's why they never updated Lord of the Rings card game to allow that type of mulligan just for everything, is because Galdor exists. And then as an action, if you have no cards in your hand, you draw to 6 cards once per game. So kind of like the lore Aragorn effect, you got a one-time effect where you get to do something really cool, which you will very often forget that you can do it if you play with it in the game. So Galdor maybe is a little bit of gets a knock against them in the meta because he couldn't because they couldn't make the game easier by allowing a partial mulligan. But the card draw is very important. You get to start the game off with a Noldor deck with cards in your discard pile, which is very useful. But he's more of a support character, and he's honestly kind of expensive for a support character, even given also that you'll forget probably to draw your hand back up to 6 cards sometimes. It doesn't really work with some of the other Noldor cards like Erestor, the Noldor hero. That he doesn't work with Erestor because Erestor makes you discard your hand every turn. It's so it's not ideal. So Galdor is in the C tier. It's unfortunate. If he didn't have better options, he'd probably be in the B tier, but he's C tier for me for Noldor. And then Argalad. Argalad is a Sylvan hero. Argalad is also lore. He's got a threat cost of 9, 2 willpower, 2 attack, 1 defense, 4 health. He's ranged, and you exhaust Argalad to choose an enemy in the staging area. Until the end of the phase, that enemy gets minus X threat, where X is Argalad's attack. If it reduces the enemy to 0, you deal 1 damage. So Argalad is actually kind of a popular hero amongst some people because he's a very good support hero. He's one hero where you keep like peppering enemies with that damage, and then you'll find out, be like, wow, these guys was much easier to kill thanks to Argalad. Didn't even realize it. You can attach a card like Bow of Galadrin to him to give him attack of 3, and then he's effectively questing for 3, although you only really quest for that full 3 if you got enemies with 3 threat out there. But getting the extra damage in there makes it like it's a little better than the number you're questing with. Argalad's in the B tier. I would probably put him higher if I play with him more. He doesn't really fit into Sylvan decks that much as far as synergy is concerned, but it is a thing to reduce like the traits of enemies. That's a Sylvan thing to do. It just doesn't stack necessarily all the time. But he's a cool guy. If you get readying effects on him, he can attack. You just boost up his attack. He can kind of quest with his attack and attack with his attack. So yeah, he's in the B tier. All right, moving on now to the unique allies. First with Ozane Silverbeard. Ozane Silverbeard is one of the he's one of the post-Dwarf Swarm dwarves. So you see, when the game first started off, you had so many expansions with dwarves, like the Hobbit expansions, that Dwarf Swarm was by far the strongest deck. So once people were sick of Dwarf Swarm and could play other things, the new dwarves that were released later didn't get as much run. And Ozane Silverbeard was one of those dwarves. So he's a tactics dwarf warrior. For a cost of 3, you get 0 willpower, which is pretty normal for tactics, 3 attack, 2 defense, 2 health. And as a response, after Ozane Silverbeard participates in an attack that destroys an enemy, you spend 1 tactics resource to deal 2 damage to another enemy that shares a trait with a destroyed enemy. So if it's like you kill an orc, you get to damage another orc. Any player may trigger this response. So Ozane is going to be the first of these cards that are released in the Dream Chaser here, where you can spend additional resources to do additional things. I don't generally love that. And the reason I don't love that is because that cost adds up. It helps when it's the same sphere, because you could, in theory, it's easier for you to do the effect yourself. If you already have this character, you already have that access to that type of resource. But that's a lot of resource burn. And a lot of people like having those options in play, and it does. Obviously, it's helpful to have a lot of options for these additional effects that you can do. It's like almost like a free card in a way, but they're very, by definition, they're very narrow and they have to follow the initial effect. Ozane Silverbeard for me is C tier for 2 reasons. One, I don't love that extra effect. I don't think it comes into play too much. But 2, 3 cost for a tactics ally is quite a bit. That's expensive, especially because that's not like the biggest dwarf sphere. You do get Gimli and Thalin in the core set, but really leadership is mainly the best dwarf sphere. Next we have Daerwyn. Daerwyn? The Rohan warrior. For a cost of 4, you get a defender. You get no willpower, 1 attack, 3 defense, 3 health. He's a sentinel, and while he's defending, you can spend 1 leadership resource to cancel a shadow effect dealt to the attacking enemy. And any player can trigger this. So you got like a built-in shadow cancellation option when you have Daerwyn, but you need to also have access to leadership, or someone needs access to leadership. So he's strong and can survive a lot. If he can defend attacks up to 5 without getting knocked out with canceling the shadow effect, that's good. But he costs a 4. So that's a lot. That's, again, tactics cost of 4. So for me, he's C tier as well. It's just very expensive. And it's not an automatic cancellation effect. You got to keep spending for it. So it's only C tier. Now into the Spirit Noble, or the Spirit unique allies. Those are the tactics unique allies. The Spirit allies, first we have Glorfindel, who's the Noldor Noble Warrior. For cost of 5, which is about as expensive as allies get. Obviously it goes up to 6, but 5 is a lot. 3 willpower, 3 attack, 1 defense, 4 health. And Glorfindel can be played from your discard pile. If you have Círdan, and you draw Glorfindel, you put him in the discard pile because there's no reason not to. And then as an action, you discard a card from your hand to ready Glorfindel, limit once per phase. So you can do this to quest with him, then you can attack with him, and then maybe attack with him again. Because you can ready him in the quest phase and then in the combat phase. So it's very good. For cost of 5, you got to be very good. And he can come in from the discard pile, so he's a card that makes Noldor decks more palatable. I don't love Noldor decks because I don't love discarding cards. I always feel like I'm just going to run out of cards. But that's kind of what you're doing. A tier. A minus, though. You got to be good to justify the cost, and he justifies it. He also can he shares a trait with Prince Imrahil, so he can come in with Prince Imrahil, although that's a weird deck combination if you're doing that. But if you buy this set, maybe you're likely to have them together. Next is Sam Gamgee. If I'm acting like my mouth is dry, it's because I just recorded this for a while, and then my microphone died. And I didn't realize it died. And I keep checking it, and it has not died yet. So I'm kind of doing this like a second time. All right, Sam Gamgee. He's a spirit ally, just like Glorfindel. He's got a cost of 3 most of the time. Well, maybe not most of the time. 2 willpower, 1 attack, 1 defense, and 2 health. You reduce the cost to play Sam Gamgee by 2 if you control Frodo Baggins. And as a response, after a player raises his threat, that player may spend 1 spirit resource to ready Sam Gamgee. He gets +1 willpower, attack, and defense until the end of the round, limit once per round. So, 1, you're basically auto-including Sam Gamgee if you have Frodo, and if you don't have Frodo, you're probably not. Or if you have Sam Gamgee, the hero card, you're not putting him in your deck. And as a response, after a player raises a threat, which happens sometimes, you could spend that extra resource to give him a little bit of a boost and ready him. So, which is fine. It's kind of a narrow circumstance where that happens. You have to be raising your threat probably in the quest phase to do that. Because you've had to have already exhausted him in the quest phase, which you probably will because he's got 2 willpower. And then you make him stronger. So maybe a stronger attack you're able to get together here. Sam's an A tier, though. Even just the 2 willpower for 1 cost, a lot of quests you have to play with Frodo in the Fellowship of the Ring saga, much less Frodo's other cards being pretty strong if you're going to use them in other circumstances. So Sam Gamgee, he's a Frodo card, A tier. Next is Sulian. Sulian, she's a Dunedain scout, and she costs 4. So she gets 3 willpower, no attack, 2 defense, 2 health. And as an action, you spend 1 lore resource to exhaust Sulian. And then each location in the staging area gets -1 threat until the end of the phase, and any player may trigger this action. So you're going to spend, that's a lot to spend for Sulian. You quest for 3. If you have at least 3 locations in the staging area, you then consider instead spending a resource to exhaust Sulian to reduce that threat to get at least the benefit of the 3 willpower, the same effect, really. Kind of compares to Northern Tracker for a cost of 4. You do something to every location, but you can't clear out locations by reducing their threat. You can clear out locations by adding progress on them, But Sullian also has the fallback of having 3 willpower, where the tracker doesn't. I still prefer the tracker to Sullian, significantly so. 4 cost in spirit is quite a lot, and you need to do the lore resource to do the big effect. Otherwise, you're just paying 4 for 3 quests, which is fine enough, but C tier. If it were just that effect, it'd be D tier, but C tier for Sullian, because that's, I don't know, yeah, it's a lot, and the Northern Tracker is just so much better. And if you have one in the deck, you probably don't have the other because of how expensive they are, even though they're both Dunedain. Next, we have Elda here, who's Dunedain Noble Sentinel, though. 4 cost in leadership, 1 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, 3 health. That's always such, like the Northern Tracker, that's always such an awkward trait split, is the 2 attack, 2 defense. Yeah, you can do both of them, but you're just not doing both of them. You're not readying that character. It's kind of awkward. As an action, you spend 1 lore resource, which is not what Elda here is, to look at the face-down shadow card dealt to an engaged enemy. If it has a shadow effect, Elda here gets +2 defense until the end of the phase, and any player may trigger this action. Now, to be clear, not all shadow effects are canceled out by defense. Yes, Elda here's in the D tier. I really don't like these cards where you have to spend a resource from a different sphere to get that extra effect, especially if that extra effect doesn't always help you. That's really expensive for Elda here, and if you keep doing it on cards that have no shadow effect, then defending with 2 with health of 3 is, for 4 you want more defense than that. D tier for Elda here. Next is Kaorl. Kaorl is a Rohan scout. For cost of 2, you get 1 willpower, 2 attack, 0 defense, 2 health. And as an action, you can spend 1 spirit. We're in leadership, by the way. Elda here and Kaorl are leadership. Spend 1 spirit resource to ready Kaorl. Then you may give control of Kaorl to another player. Any player may trigger this action limit once per phase. So what you're doing here is you're just moving, you're getting an extra attack out of Kaorl. For 1 spirit resource, you get to ready Kaorl and then attack. And but another player gets to do the attack. And you only do it once per phase, so you do it just like 1 time. So you get like an extra attack for spirit when you don't have, maybe the other player is the one with spirit. It's just kind of weird. C tier. So yeah, we're talking like a spirit readying effect. I mean, you got to pay to get Kaorl into play in the first place. It's super fiddly to change control of characters. I don't like doing it, to be honest. Robin Smallborough. Lore, now we're into lore, Hobbit Sheriff, for a cost of 2, 2 willpower, 0 attack, 1 defense, and 2 health. As a response, after you travel to a location, spend 1 spirit resource to raise the engagement cost of each enemy in play by X until the end of the round, where X is that location's quest points. Any player may trigger this response. So what you need to have happen is when you travel, you need to have a location with probably a lot of quest points, in which case you can get 1 round of higher engagement costs to avoid engagements for 1 spirit resource. Robin Smallborough, besides that, is pretty strong for questing for Hobbit, and that's honestly 90% of what you're doing with Robin Smallborough. Like a D plus, maybe. C minus. C tier, because 2 for 2 in a Hobbit deck is actually fine. But that the ability and the spending, I don't give much for that. C tier. And the last unique ally is Ioreth. Ioreth is a lore ally for 0 cost. You get 0 willpower, 0 attack, 0 defense, 1 health, and you cannot attack or defend. So once Ioreth is in play, she's probably sticking around for a bit. Ioreth is the Gondorian healer. Thus, as an action, you spend 1 lore resource to exhaust Ioreth. Then you heal 3 points of damage on a character. Any player may trigger this action. So that's better. So this one I like. So 1, you're talking about the resource that Ioreth is a part of. So you're not dependent on someone else, or one of your other resources to actually use Ioreth. But Ioreth's healing is better. It's, I think, very much better than a lot of other healers. So compared to Daughter of the Nimrodel from the core set, the Daughter costs 3, and then you heal 2 from a hero for free. Ioreth is free, but then for 1, you heal 3 from any character. So you need to have at least 5 heals in before the Daughter of the Nimrodel is better than Ioreth. Now, Ioreth is unique, so you get 1, but it's still pretty prolific healing, and any player can use it. Then you have the Warden of Healing, where you heal 1 on 2 different characters, but then the Warden also costs 2. But you can stack that and then accelerate that if you want to spend more. I like Iorith a lot. The main downside to Iorith is honestly the fact that she's unique. I don't like using the healers as chump blockers anyway either. So Iorith is pretty good. It's like the Lore of Imladris, where for a cost of 2, you heal all damage, but you need that card. Iorith, for a cost of 1, you heal 3 damage. So that's like for a cost of 2, you're healing 6, although it does take 2 turns. Yeah, Iorith is very good. A tier. Great healer. Not S tier level healing, but very good. Now to the non-unique allies. We're going to start off with tactics again. We have here the Mithlond Sea Watcher, which is the first of a series of Noldor allies that do similar stuff. The Noldor Warrior, the Mithlond Sea Watcher, Sea Drive ran out of space.
The C word.
For recording stuff in the middle of doing this. Perils of having a YouTube channel. The Mithlond Sea Watcher is an ally of cost 2, 1 willpower, 1 attack, 0 defense, 2 health. And while the top card of your discard pile is an ally, Mithlond Sea Watcher gets +2 attacking, gets ranged. So Mithlond Sea Watcher goes with other cards you'll see in a moment that are Noldor allies, where the top card of your discard pile, depending on if it's ally, attachment, or event, triggers a different one of their abilities. So Mithlond Sea Watcher is a little weird because maybe like a third of the time, maybe a little more, you get a ranged attacks of 3 for a cost of 2, which is good value, but doesn't happen a lot. C tier for Mithlond Sea Watcher.
Get rid of the C word.
I'll leave when I'm good and ready.
Next is Veteran Sword Elf, a Noldor warrior. So Veteran Sword Elf gains +1 attack and +1 defense for each copy of Veteran Sword Elf in your discard pile. So if you'd like to discard some cards, cost of 3 again, so this is a lot. If you want to discard cards when you have Círdan or another Noldor that starts discarding, the Veteran Sword Elf is one you'd want to discard so that you can get one of the Sword Elves out there with a lot of, that's all pumped up. But because you only get 3 copies in your deck, it's still, you can only get so strong, and you're discarding 2 and you might never get the third one. Veteran Sword Elf is only in the C tier. The Marksman of Lorien, the Sylvan Warrior, so ranged, cost of 3, 0 willpower, 3 attack, 0 defense, 2 hit points. As a response, after Marksman of Lorien enters play, choose an enemy. That enemy gets -2 defense until the end of the round. So you can kind of get like a 1-time of attack for 5 and then attacks for 3 afterwards. So Marksman of Lorien already is attacking, well, it's Sylvan, but also is already attacking for 3 right off the bat. Marksman of Lorien's in the A tier. I actually really like that effect. Plus it goes well with Sylvans because they're coming in and out of play a lot. Master Ironsmith. So that's a Gondor craftsman we got here. So 3 cost, 1 willpower, 1 attack, 1 defense, 2 hit points. A lot of expensive allies. As a response, the Gondor craftsman, well, after you play Master Ironsmith from your hand, he's not the Gondor craftsman, he's the Master Ironsmith. If you paid all the resource from one single hero, then you attach a weapon or armor attachment from your hand or discard pile to that hero without paying his resource cost. Maybe there's a little bit of weird synergy here, where if you have Prince Imrahil and Noldor, you get Imrahil can put Glorfindel into play, and Master Ironsmith has a lot of choices in the discard pile. But also, like, that's, I don't know, this is just really expensive. To force yourself to pay 3 tactics resources from one hero is a lot. But if you do, you get the free attachment, which can be like a 4-cost Citadel plate. But Master Ironsmith by himself isn't even that good. C tier for Master Ironsmith. Soldier of Dol Amroth. The Gondor warrior, costs 2, willpower of 0, 1 attack, 1 defense, 2 hit points. As a response, after Soldier of Dol Amroth enters play, you reduce the cost of the next tactics card you play this phase by 1, which is similar to having him just being a cost of 1, but not as reliable because you might not have another tactics card or resources to buy another card with. It's kind of just a kind of strong chump blocker for a cost of, call it like 1.5. C tier. Honestly, the difference between, like, there aren't that many attacks you can survive with 3, so he's kind of almost just a chump blocker. Just, yeah, for a cost of 1, it'd be better. C tier. Sailor of Lune. This is another one of the Noldor allies. This one a Noldor Scout, where you get the benefits from the discard pile. 2 cost, 1 willpower, 1 attack, 0 defense, 2 hit points. While the top card of your discard pile is an event, Sailor of Lune gets +1 willpower and cannot be damaged while committed to the quest. That happens for a lot of quests out of the core set because of Necromancer's Reach. But otherwise, getting the 2 for 2, 2 costs for 2 willpower is good, but not that different from a lot of other cards. And it doesn't happen all the time because your entire deck isn't events. But you can tailor that. You can choose which cards to discard to make sure the top card of your discard pile is an event, ally or an event or an attachment. Still just in the C tier. Woodland Courier. By the way, we're into the lore or the spirit allies here. The Sailor of Loon is a spirit ally, and so is the Woodland Courier. Woodland Courier is a Sylvan Scout. For cost of 2, you get 1 willpower, 1 attack, 0 defense, 1 health. And as a response, after Woodland Courier enters play, place 1 progress on a location, 2 progress instead if that location has the forest trait. So, yeah, so it's like having 2 willpower, but you get to put it on a location in the staging area, which can be useful instead of using it, but it's only a one-time thing. But forest traits, you aren't really building your deck around going up in forest quests that much. You're kind of just, if you're doing Sylvan, I think there's a little bit of maybe other things where Sylvans have synergies with forest locations. C tier. Another spirit ally is the Linhir Sea Captain. For cost of 3, you get 2 willpower, 0 attack, 1 defense, 2 health. As a response, after you play Linhir Sea Captain from your hand, if you paid all of its resource costs from a single hero's resource pool, which is saying something because we're talking about 3 spirit resources, both that hero and Linhir Sea Captain do not exhaust a quest this round. So if you manage to get it all, like 3 turns worth of resources to spend on Linhir Sea Captain, which is also going to be much easier to do if you have more than 1 spirit hero, then you get 2 free readies, which could be, pretty strong characters. So it could be Kirdan getting to use its 2 attack or 2 defense because you use it on questing. But honestly, because it's after you play Linhir Sea Captain from your hand, it's probably not after your questing, it's probably beforehand. So you need to have some other effect that you're triggering here. And plus, it's the single hero restriction that's tough. 2 willpower is fine, but another C tier card. Rovanian Outrider. So this is a Dale Scout, and this is before a lot of the Dale cards were released. But the Rovanian Outrider costs 3 for 1 willpower, 2 attack, 1 defense, and 2 hit points. As a response, after the Rovanian Outrider commits to a quest, so this happens potentially every round, you place 1 progress on a location in the staging area, and if that location is not explored, you also give Rovanian Outrider +1 willpower to the end of the phase. So that's pretty close to saying you're paying 3 for 3 willpower, which is pretty strong and doesn't have a weird restriction like all coming from the same hero or anything like that. And clearing locations is pretty good, so if you don't get that extra willpower, that's not the end of the world, because clearing locations is usually very effective. B tier for Rovanian Outrider. Has nothing to do with Dale, really. It's more of a scout card than a Dale card, but it's still good. Yeah, so that's what's stopping it for being A or A tier or S tier, but it's good B tier card. Warden of the Havens, the Noldor Warrior. This is for cost of 2, 0 willpower, 1 attack, 1 defense, and 3 health. We're into leadership now. While the top card of your discard pile is an attachment, Warden of the Havens gets +2 defense and gains Sentinel. So this is like the Mithlin Sea Watcher, but just the leadership defender. So it's still C tier, especially because you don't usually have a lot of attachments, so you don't get the benefit very much. I'm not a fan of this corner of the Noldor archetype. C tier. Dwarven Sellsword, a dwarf warrior, costs 1. You get 2 willpower, 2 attack, 2 defense, and 3 health. And as a forced effect, at the end of the round, you discard Dwarven Sellsword unless the players as a group spend 1 leadership resource. So, you got to keep paying the guy. Because he starts off as a cost of 1, that's not that bad, because this guy would normally cost at least probably 4. So it's a good end of game character, because yeah, I mean, if you only have 1 or 2 rounds left, you just want to throw him in there, and you get some nice boosts. I like Dwarven Sellsword. I also think that's a pretty cool thematic effect. Leadership resources are easier to part with than the other spheres too, so I'm going to go A tier for the Dwarven Sellsword. Knight of the White Tower. The Knight of the White Tower is a Gondor warrior. For a cost of 4, you get 2 willpower, 2 attack, 3 defense, and 3 life. And Knight of the White Tower's resource cost must be paid from a single hero's resource pool. So that's doubly tough, because that's an expensive card. It's more of what you would expect the Dwarven Sellsword to cost-ish. But it has to be from 1 hero, which is hard. But we got talked about Denethor before. That's actually very doable in leadership. Sometimes you only need to go with 1 leadership hero because you can get so many resources in leadership. B tier for Knight of the White Tower. More doable here than a lot of the other, 1 hero payment characters. Now over to lore. We got the Linden Navigator. The Noldor Scout costs 2. You get 2 willpower, 1 attack, 1 defense, and 2 life. Linden Navigator does not exhaust to commit to a quest and can commit to quests while exhausted, which can have some other benefits by having a character just to exhaust whenever you want. As a forced effect, after resolving a quest in which Linden Navigator was committed, either discard it from play or discard one card from your hand. So there are a lot of ways to discard cards with Noldor characters. One of which was Círdan, but you'll see this is another way, one of the ways you can intentionally discard cards and sometimes prime your discard pile to have the right card on top. So it's not that bad. Plus, when you get a lot of quests that have things like high tests and things like that, the Linden Navigator, being able to stay ready and be available for that is good too. B tier for Linden Navigator. I'm not a big Noldor deck player, but when I do play with Noldor decks, I always use the Linden Navigator. The Eladris Caregiver was another healer. This is a Noldor healer. Cost 2, you got 1 willpower, 1 attack, or no attack, sorry, 1 defense, and 2 health. And as an action, you discard a card from your hand to heal 1 damage on any character. So now comparing to the Daughter of the Nimrydel, cost 2 to get into play instead of 3, but you discard a card to heal instead of just healing from only heroes, but 1 on any character instead of 2 on a hero. Limit twice per round. So it's another way. Maybe this is your way of discarding cards instead of the Linden Navigator. B tier because you need to discard cards, so it ends up being kind of a free thing to do. Like if you have Airstore and you're discarding your whole card, your whole hand at the end of every round, using Eladris Caregiver to get free heals out of that instead is very good. But you're all kind of limited because you can only do so many discards in a round. B tier for Eladris Caregiver. Not my favorite healer, but not bad. Next is Guardian of Ithilien. This is a Gondor Ranger. Even though he kind of looks like an elf, this is a Gondor Ranger. So for cost 1, you get 1 attack and 1 health. No defense, no willpower. And as a response, after Guardian of Ithilien enters play, return an enemy engaged with you to the staging area. So I don't like pushing enemies back into the staging area generally because that means that they're going to be up against you when you're questing the next round. And presumably they're going to engage you again in most cases because the reason you were engaged with them in the first place is probably because their threat number was low enough that you probably had to engage them. So it's like it's much better just avoid an attack if you're trying to just minimize damage. But because we're talking Gondorian Rangers, you could be pushing that enemy into a trap. This can be something where you play a trap and then push a card into a trap and then lay another trap to be ready for the quest phase, because often you run into a problem with trap decks where you lay 2 traps that attach to the same enemy and it's overkill because you lay them and then the questing phase starts and they both attach to the first enemy. To avoid that a little bit here, C tier for Guardian of Ithilien because trap decks aren't very good, but it can be somewhat useful. It's not terrible. I could see B tier if you really like trap decks, but I'm still going with C tier because not every trap card, you need to have a specific trap card to like stop the character from engaging with you to avoid that double quest against them and then fight them again. The Mirkwood Explorer, we're into lore allies if I didn't already mention that. The Mirkwood Explorer is a woodman scout.
I now hold the only access to the wooded glens of Catan.
This is a lot before a lot of the woodmen came out. The cost of 3, 2 willpower, 1 attack, 0 defense, 2 health. As a response after Mirkwood Explorer quests successfully, you place 1 progress on it. And you usually quest successfully in Lords of the Card Game, so that's going to happen a bit. And then as an action, you exhaust Mirkwood Explorer to move all progress from it to a location in play. So Mirkwood Explorer can be actually a very good card for clearing out locations where if you got a location with 3 quest points on it, it takes 3 successful questings with Mirkwood Explorer before the Mirkwood Explorer can say, hey, you're out of here. So I like the Mirkwood Explorer for that reason. I actually use Mirkwood Explorer to some effect too. It's a good card. It's not really a scout deck synergy thing, but if you want cards to clear out locations in the staging area, it's one of the better ones. I'm going to go A tier here for Mirkwood Explorer. I know it seems pricey, but honestly, that's a very good effect. It's like you're paying 3 for 3. 3 costs for 3 willpower, because you get that extra progress every turn, but you get to be specific about what you do with it. So it's very good. Now into the neutral allies. First, we have the Arid Luin Miner. So for a cost of 3, if you play it that way, you get 1 willpower, 1 attack, 1 defense, and 2 health. But as a response, if Arid Luin Miner is discarded from the top of your deck, you put it into play in your control, so for free. So there are 2 types of dwarf decks. You have Dwarf Swarm, which is basically just get a lot of dwarves and get Dane Ironfoot to boost all their questing and attacking. Or you have Dwarf Mining, where you're discarding cards off the top of your deck, which is like you're digging through your deck. So you use the Arid Luin Miner. It's an auto-include if you're going with a Dwarf Mining deck. I don't love Dwarf Mining decks, and he's not super strong, but that's what he does. So I think as he nails that strategy very well, I'm going to give him B tier, but barely, because he's not that strong. The 3 cost is really tough to look past, and it screws up all the calculators if you build decks online, like on RingsDB. But he's B tier, because he's basically becomes like a free dwarf. And then the last non-unique ally, and the last ally we're talking about here, is the Guardian of Rivendell. The Noldor warrior costs 3, plus other stuff. 1 willpower, 2 attack, 3 defense, 3 health. So is the defender. And as an additional cost to play Guardian of Rivendell from your hand, you must discard 2 cards from your hand. So another Noldor card. If you already discarded everything, you need to discard to play Guardian of Rivendell. So it's a strong defender. Cost 3 isn't that bad. Like I said, you're probably already discarding cards, but you also need a lot of card draw at this point to keep up with all of that. So I'm giving Guardian of Rivendell B tier, because if you are playing Noldor, hopefully you know what you're doing and you're not going to run out of cards to discard, and you can just play it. That's my case for B tier. On to the unique attachments. First, we have To the Sea, which is a song attachment. Attach it to a Noldor character for 1 cost. This is a spirit attachment. There are no unique tactics attachments in this set. As an action, you exhaust To the Sea, and discard X cards from your hand to reduce the cost of the next Noldor ally played this phase by X to a minimum of 1. So, for example, if you have the Guardian of Rivendell, you can make it so you discard 4 cards and pay 1. If you also pay 2, because you have to pay for To the Sea. No, yeah, well, you did when you had attached it. It's fine. It's more discarding things, arguably too many discarding effects for Noldor. You have a lot of options to discard stuff in Noldor. You probably need to sneak in some other non-Noldor cards at some point. Its cost is, I'm going to say C tier. I think it's almost like too much of a good thing here. Next, we have Windfola. Windfola is a mount. It's a spirit mount with a cost of 1 that you attach to a spirit hero or Eowyn, and it's restricted. Realistically, you're probably attaching the spirit Eowyn from the core set. Attached character gets +1 willpower, and after attached character is removed from the quest, you can exhaust Windfola to commit the attached hero back to the quest. So if you ever have to remove someone from the quest, you have to remove Eowyn with all of Eowyn's willpower from the quest. Windfola gets Eowyn back in the quest, which is pretty big. Windfola is a very good mount. For a cost of only 1, 2, that's really good to have. Like I said, you're probably using it on Eowyn. Here we go. S tier. I don't know. I think this is our first S tier. It might be our only S tier of the set. A lot of the player cards are kind of weird here. Windfola is not weird. Windfola is very good. Rod of the Steward. Not to mention Windfola triggers Elfhelm's boost too. Rod of the Steward is a 0-cost leadership attachment. Now we're at the leadership here. It's an item that you attach to a Gondor hero. And as an action, you spend 2 resources from attached hero's resource pool to draw 1 card. So what you do is you pair the Rod of the Steward with Steward of Gondor, and each round as Steward of Gondor triggers or gives you 2 resources. You have the option to use a Rod of Steward to convert those 2 resources into a card, which normally is a lot to spend for a card, but you're probably pairing it with Steward of Gondor. They're all unique, so it's maybe a little bit to get all of this together. So I'm going to go A tier, although I really like Rod of the Steward as an effect. If I go with like Denethor and 3 copies of Steward of Gondor, I'll probably throw at least 2 copies of Rod of the Steward into my deck, just to have that option, because you don't want too many resources for your crazy resource generating hero. Rune Master. So Rune Master is a title that you attach to a ranger or a leadership hero. For a cost of 1, you get the response of after a signal attachment is attached to a hero, so any hero, you exhaust Rune Master to add 1 resource to that hero's resource pool. Now, quick history lesson on cards that are not reprinted. You used to have a lot of attachments that were the signal attachments. There are Dunedain Mark, Dunedain Remedy, Dunedain Watch, Dunedain, not a Dunedain Watch.
This watch.
In the first set of expansions for the game, in Shadows of Mirkwood, you got a ton of Dunedain attachments that were all signals. And it was Dunedain Cash, which was getting ranged, Dunedain Mark, which gave you 1 attack. Dunedain Quest gave you +1 willpower. Dunedain Remedy allows you to heal 1 damage. Dunedain Signal gave you Sentinel. Dunedain Warning gave you defense. So if you have those attachments, this can be pretty good. But since none of those were reprinted, this card kind of sucks. Yeah, you'll see. You do get 1. We do actually get 1 of the Dunedain cards here, but it only goes with that one, so it's getting D tier. Next we have Prince of Dol Amroth, which is a sphereless attachment. Prince of Dol Amroth costs 3. It's a title that you attach only to Prince Imrahil. And Prince Imrahil gains the Outlands trait, which is an interesting to do because you don't get any Outlands allies in any of the reprinted stuff. But When you control outlines allies that belong to 4 different spheres, you add 1 resource to Prince Imrahil's pool when you collect resources during the resource phase. If Prince Imrahil is a hero, that would be weird if Prince Imrahil, the ally, got this card. So if you have the Steward Sphere, meaning you have Herluin the Fair and all the Outlands allies, this gives you a second hero that boosts up your Outlands deck. So it's A tier for that reason. It's not. It would be probably S tier for just power alone. But Outlands isn't really obviously a super available deck archetype, and it's not a super interesting deck archetype either. So it's not can't get S tier really anymore. Next up is Strider. Strider is a sphereless title that you attach to a hero, and while you control 2 or fewer heroes, the attached hero does not exhaust to commit to the quest. So it's like doubles one of the heroes. While you control 5 or fewer characters, attached hero gets +2 willpower, which early in the game, if you have only 2 heroes, that might be the case. If you're late in the game where you've lost a hero, you probably have more than 5 characters, but you're probably not building your deck around that situation anyway. So Strider, if you want to go 2 heroes, Strider is an auto include. If you want to go with like Aragorn and a Hobbit, you need to deal with Strider, and that way you can also, if you really want to get like all the secrecy bonuses from keeping your threat under 20, that is an option. Usually you're either going like 3 hobbits to do that, or you're going with 2 heroes, and it would be probably Aragorn and someone like one of the hobbits. That's a lot weaker. So B tier because it opens up that possibility, but only B tier because unless you're trying to challenge yourself, you're not usually going with 2 heroes. That's a pretty rare thing. And the last unique attachment is Narya. Narya is one of the rings of power. If you recall, we had Vilya, who's Elrond's ring. You have Nenya, which is Galadriel's ring, and Narya, who's Círdan's ring. And then Círdan gave the ring to Gandalf. So Narya costs 2, and you attach it to Círdan or to Gandalf. Attached character gains the leadership resource icon. And then you exhaust Narya and the attached character to choose and ready up to 2 allies, and those allies get +1 attack and +1 defense. So, for example, if you have Círdan and Narya, instead of using Círdan in a round, you can then get a second use of Spirit Glorfindel if you got Spirit Glorfindel in a round, and get maybe an attack of 4 out of them. And another ally, potentially another really expensive one, or any of the lore allies, or any of the Noldor allies that you might have. Not to mention, if you're going the Gandalf angle, you probably drop in a lot of guys into play that are pretty strong too. Generally, I think Narya is more Círdan's card than Gandalf. And remember, you only want to attach this to hero Gandalf, not to ally Gandalf, because ally Gandalf has a tendency to leave play, and wander off. I got Narya is an A tier, almost S tier, but the thing stopping Narya from being S tier is the fact that Círdan's willpower is very strong, and I don't like not being able to use Círdan's willpower. Narya is in the A tier. All right, still going here. We got now the non-unique attachments. First, we have the tactics ones. First is Grappling Hook.
Grappling hook!
For a cost of 1, it's an item that you attach to any character. And as a quest action, you can discard Grappling Hook and the exhaust character. No, sorry. You discard Grappling Hook and exhaust the attached character to commit the attached character to the quest, using attack instead of willpower, or defense if it's a siege quest. So Grappling Hook is a good way to add someone with strong attack to a quest, like after you find out you need more help. Cost 1 to basically prepare the effect, and there are some characters that can have pretty strong attack numbers. You could, in theory, use it for tactics Éowyn, and then use Éowyn's ability to ready herself to get to quest for like 10 with 1 character. That's a pretty niche application. C tier. You're usually not gonna need to quest with someone's attack, and you have to decide in advance, so that makes it a little bit less advantageous.
Wouldn't you rather have like a doll or something?
Vigilant Guard, which is a skill that you attach to a warrior character. Limit 1 per character. Attached character gets +2 hit points, and as a response, when another character would be assigned any amount of damage, place 1 of that damage on the attached character instead. Should mention, this card costs 3. For 3, you get 2 hit points that you can use for a variety of different attacks. Given that it's a skill and not a restricted attachment, that's a pretty good way to get hit points, although a card like Citadel Plate gets you 4 hit points for cost of 4. But then again, you're ready to absorb damage if you don't know when it's coming, when you can get the Citadel Plate wrong and who you put it on, who really needed all the health. Vigilant Guard is also in the C tier. That's almost D tier though. I don't. It's too expensive for me to like using it a lot. Raiment of War, which is an item that's also an armor and a weapon. at the same time. It's this tactics attachment that costs 2, attached to only a warrior character. There are a lot of those, thankfully. Raiment of War counts as 2 restricted attachments, which is a problem because a lot of tactics attachments are weapons and armor that are restricted. Attached character gets +1 attack, +1 defense, and +2 hit points. So that's a lot of boosts, although it's kind of inefficient because you're usually either defending or attacking. So it's really more of a defense thing. But it uses up both restricted attachment slots. There are a lot of uses to have cheap attachments, and a cost 2 attachment that does this still it's not that amazing, and then you can't put any more armor or weapons on them. So C tier for Raiment of War. Hithlane, which is a spirit attachment. We're into spirit now. For a cost of 1, it's an item that you attach to a location, and you get up to 1 per location. As a response, after a player plays a Sylvan ally from his hand, which happens a lot in Sylvan decks, place 1 progress on the attached location. Hithlane arguably is an auto-include if you have Sylvan decks and you're going with Spirit. Hithlane, I love direct progress on locations in the staging area. Hithlane's in the A tier. Not quite S tier, but it's A tier. In service of the cost of 1, leadership attachment that we're on to now. It's a title you attach to a character to give it the Gondor trait. I'm reminded of Nor Am I a Stranger, where for a cost of 1, you get the Rohan trait from Conflict at the Carrack. I mean, that's the going rate for traits, but I don't know. Like, I just build my decks with all the characters already being in the trait that I need anyway. It's not that common. I'm sure there are a lot of times you can be very clever with what characters get this and get a nice boost, but I don't use it that much. In fact, I don't really ever use cards like this. I gotta go D tier because I don't anticipate I don't want to use it. There are plenty of decks to choose from where you don't have to be like, try to combine them in too many different ways. It's enough to try and play all the different cards, much less to have this corner case. Mariner's Compass, which is a 1-cost attachment that goes on a leadership or scout character. At the beginning of the travel phase, as a response, you can exhaust Mariner's Compass and the attached character to search the top 5 cards of the encounter deck for a location. Switch that location with location in the staging area. Shuffle the encounter deck. If you want to get the most out of Mariner's Compass, you got to use it with an ally that's like a cheap ally. That is a scout. You might be, for example, using it on the Snowborn Scout. When Snowborn Scout does its thing and shows up and drops 1 progress, instead of chump blocking, you could instead be massaging locations, which isn't terrible. But a lot of times these scout allies are kind of flimsy. So you could easily lose your Mariner's Compass if you're using on a character that you don't need to do anything else with. C tier for Mariner's Compass. A lot of times, 2 locations, they're better, but it's like pick your poison. They're not going to help you that much by massaging it all the time, unless you can really keep that ally around for a while. Still in leadership, we have now the Armored Destrier. For 2 costs, you get a mount that you attach to a leadership or sentinel hero, and it's restricted. After attached hero defends against an attack, you exhaust the Armored Destrier to ready attached hero, and then you also discard a shadow card from another enemy engaged with the defending player. So if you have that Armored Destrier and a very strong defender, you defend once, then you use the Armored Destrier to ready the hero, and then you can defend against, it's ready now to defend against an attack of an enemy without another shadow card. So it's a good way to amp up a character that's already good at defending. A tier for Armored Destrier. It's a little bit restrictive on who you put it on. You can put it on a character like Baragon because Baragon is Sentinel, but that's not nothing, that restriction, which is why it's not S tier. It's also, if it costs of 1, it would be S tier though. Dunedain Remedy. This is one of the signals that did get reprinted, and you get in the same set, you got the Rune Master card. It's a 0-cost leadership attachment that you attach to a hero, and as a response, after Dunedain Remedy is attached to a hero, you heal 1 damage on that hero. And here's the thing that most people didn't even bother with the first set of signals in Shadows of Mirkwood. As an action, you can pay 1 resource from attached hero's resource pool to attach Dunedain Remedy to another hero. If you have Rune Master, that resource can go to the new hero too. So you can like pass the Dunedain Remedy around to like heal characters. So it's another way of healing. But again, the lack of other signal cards and stuff, and the fact that you need Rune Master to do that for free, it's C tier, barely. It's too bad. If you have a complete player pool, it could be higher, but it's not that great. C tier. Ranger Spear. Now we're into the lore cards. So this is a weapon/item that costs 1. You attach it to a ranger character and it's restricted. An attached character gets +1 attack, but +2 when you're attacking an enemy with an attachment on it, i.e. a trap. So this goes with trap decks. It's +1 attack, +2 attack with the traps. So it's good for trap decks, but trap decks are kind of weak. C tier. Here's an actual trap that you have now at your disposal. So Entangling Nets, which is a lore trap for cost of 1. You play Entangling Nets into the staging area unattached, and then if unattached, attach Entangling Nets to the next eligible enemy that enters the staging area. Attached enemy gets -2 attack and -2 defense. Good trap. B tier, just because, you know, traps can be a little fiddly. B tier trap. Solid trap. Guarded Ceaselessly. This is a lore condition attachment for cost of 0 you attach to a location. And as an action, you can exhaust a ranger or scout character to give attached location -2 willpower, -2 threat until the end of the phase. So for this to get its full benefit, you need to have a ranger or scout character that has a willpower number of less than 2. Otherwise, there's not that much of a point to having this card. You also need to keep an attachment, keep a location in the staging area to even have that option. So it can turn some of your other scouts into stronger, effectively stronger questers. Arguably, this is actually the best application of Guardian of Athelion, who has willpower of 0, but is a ranger. So I'll give it C tier for that reason, although I'm like talking myself into Guardian of Athelion being a better character the more I talk about it. And the last attachment we have is Explorer's Almanac. So this is a lore item of cost 0 that you attach to a location in the staging area, and progress from questing successfully may be placed on the attached location before it is placed on the current quest. So Explorer's Almanac is pretty cool for getting progress on locations in the staging area, which I already mentioned that I like a lot. Again, if I'm facing a quest where that's a big problem, I'll probably include a lot of copies of this because it doesn't have any other requirements. It's just a way to deal with that. It doesn't require rangers or anything like that. Explorer's Almanac, it's in the B tier, although it might be lower in the B tier though, because you'd rather just put the progress somewhere as opposed to have to decide in advance where the progress goes. But sometimes it's not that tough of a decision. And finally, we're over to the events. And my microphone is still working, so I'm happy. The first event is a tactics event. This is Skyward Volley. As an additional cost to play Skyward Volley, you exhaust a ranged character you control. So it basically lets you do a strong attack with a ranged character. As a combat action, you deal 2 damage to an enemy engaged with the player, so not in the staging area. And resolve that effect again for each copy of Skyward Volley currently in your discard pile, and you may choose different targets. I'm glad they added that detail because that would have been something to search all the time. So the best way to do Skyward Volley is probably you might as well play it. You could just discard it if you're playing Noldor, and you're probably including this in Noldor decks. But if you play this 3 times, the first time you play this, for 2 costs, you get 2 damage, which is fine-ish. For 2 costs, you do 4 damage. And if you discard the first one just with a Noldor card, that's not that bad. And then the third time you use it, you get 2 costs for 6 damage. So that it's really a Noldor card. And it's a Noldor card that you want to discard, as opposed to a card that triggers discarding. So Skyward Volley, it's cost 2, though. It's still a little much, even for direct damage effects like that. And to get to your second copy of it that you see in a round, you need to be moving through your deck pretty fast. It's a B tier card. It's cool when you get it to work. I've been in a lot of quests where I wish I had more direct damage effects, so let's go with B tier. Revealed in Wrath, the 1-cost tactics event, and you can play it only if you control a Noldor hero. You choose a non-unique enemy. Hold on, there's a fly on my phone camera. Oh, you left. All right, Revealed in Wrath. Play only if you control a Noldor hero. Choose a non-unique enemy. Until the end of the phase, treat the chosen enemy's printing text box as if it were blank, except for traits. So the thing is, the biggest problem with enemies usually isn't their text box. It's just their traits and then their attack and defense and health numbers. And it's only for a phase. So if you're slick, you can use this one well. But when you're building a deck, I'm not usually going to be looking at all the different text boxes and all the enemies coming into it, so it's a C tier. Battle Fury. For cost 1, you play only before the staging step, and as a quest action, exhaust a hero you control to immediately declare it as an attacker against any eligible enemy target. Then you may spend 1 spirit resource to commit that hero to the quest. So here's where we get to it's kind of like 2 cards in one. You can play a second card for 1 spirit resource. So you get like a quick attack.
Let's use quick attack!
take an enemy out before you questing or them attacking you, which is good. And then for a spirit resource, you can then commit that hero anyway. So, and the hero, you know, you're talking about someone that's strong at attacking, maybe isn't that good at questing. So I'm going to go with B tier here. I don't like using two different resources for two different effects, but the one cost is kind of good enough already, so it's in the B tier. The one cost, tactics cost to get that quick attack in there is good. Knife work, we're still in tactics here. For cost 1, you choose a player. Each enemy engaged with that player gets -1 defense until the end of the phase. And the players as a group may spend 2 lore resources to have the chosen player draw 1 card each time he attacks and destroys an enemy in this phase. All right, so knife work has a lot of upside, but actually destroying all those enemies can be pretty tough. And 2 resources means that you got to make sure you're destroying enemies to do that. Very niche application. It's hard enough to keep track of everything going on in the board. They have all these secondary effects in these cards. It's only -1 defense for every enemy too. C tier. Last stand. Response. For 0 cost, after a warrior character is destroyed while defending against an enemy attack, deal damage to the attacking enemy equal to that character's printed attack. Now, the fact that it's just direct damage is very good because you can skip the defense of that enemy. And that can be key. It means you can jump block with a character that's not very good at defending and get a big benefit from it. I like Last Stand. I like that it's free. A tier. Jump blocking is a major thing in Lord of the Rings, the card game, even more so than healing, to be honest. Over to Spirit events now. L-Wings Flight. For cost 2, the Spirit event allows you this quest action, where you ready a questing character and give the character +1 willpower until the end of the phase, and resolve that effect again for each copy of L-Wings Flight currently in your discard pile. So you get to ready a questing character and give them +1 willpower. So they're ready to do something else in a round, and give the +1 willpower. So if you did that on Círdan, he's up to 5 and he's ready to go do other stuff. And you probably want to do the same thing where you're probably just directly discarding the first copy of L-Wings Flight, and then you have the rest of them you play later. But you could do different targets when you do this too. So I think it's B tier. I think it's kind of the same as Skyward Volley. I'm trying not to let my personal distaste for Noldor discarding excess harm my grades here. Next is 11 Z's. You play only after the staging step. For 1 spirit resource, you get the quest action. Choose X questing Hobbit characters you control. Ready each chosen character and remove them from the quest. Then reduce your threat by X. So if you have quite weak hobbits, which most hobbits are pretty weak, if you found that you didn't need to commit them to the quest, you can then use them to reduce your threat instead after the fact for 1 resource. It's fine. It doesn't come up very much in my opinion. Are they eating centipedes? What are they eating? C tier. Tides of Fate. For cost 0, you get the response. When a shadow card increases an enemy's attack by any amount, which is not all shadow effects, increase the defending character's defense by 3, although that does cover it most of the time for that attack. Then the players may, as a group, spend 2 tactics resources to ready the defending character and give it +3 attack for its next attack this phase. That can come into play. I like the fact that this costs 0, you just need Spirit, and then you can play the tactics. That to me is a lot more palatable than paying resources twice. So you get the good defense, and then you get the good attack, but that's still a lot that has to happen here. It's only when you get a shadow card that increases enemies' attacks, which is maybe often what you're most worried about. So this is kind of like a hasty stroke, like you're using your Spirit player to cancel shadow effects. And this is maybe even a better cancellation effect than Hasty Stroke is in a way. A tier for Tides of Fate. I think this was a fun card. Inspiring Presence. Cost 2s, we're still in Spirit here, as an action. Choose a hero you control, and each hero with a lower threat cost than the chosen hero, which means you're only going to do this if you have like a Gandalf or a Círdan or someone like that. So all the other heroes get +2 defense to the end of the phase, and then the players may, as a group, spend 2 leadership resources to give the same heroes +2 attack. So you can pump up your weaker heroes with this card, but it costs a lot of resources, and it's only for a phase. So you're really going to do this in the combat phase because you have the defense and then the attack. But also you're doubling up on the heroes, so those heroes maybe not using both defense and attack here. So you're probably doing the 2 Spirit here for 1 defender and 2 leadership for 1 attacker. It's not ideal, and you need a super expensive hero to do it. Maybe not super expensive, but you're doing it on your weaker heroes. D tier. I don't know that I've ever successfully pulled this card off in a way that I was satisfied with. Scouting Party. For 2 spirit resources. Response. After you commit characters to the quest, if each character you have committed to the quest is a scout, each of those characters gets +2 willpower until the end of the phase. This is the scout deck card. I guess, yeah. So you're usually not going to do a scout deck, but if you went with all scouts, you want to get this card going. It means that +2 for every character. That's pretty good. We already talked about it can be sneaky how many scouts you can get because of how little cards actually rely on scouts that don't also rely on rangers, which is a more common archetype. A tier for Scouting Party. I like that card. It makes scouts into an archetype where it really wasn't before. Now to leadership. Anchor Watch.
5 long years he wore this watch.
For cost 2, an event where as a response, after an enemy is declared as an attacker against you, declare an exhausted character you control as the defender. Resolve that effect again for each copy of Anchor Watch currently in your discard pile. All chosen characters are defending against this attack. So that's a weird thing where all the characters that are getting ready are defending in a group. So you just assign the damage if you don't have enough defense, to just one of them. So it's cost 2 and you have to defend a bunch of guys together. I mean, it can also feel like you need this, but pair it to Stand Together. For cost 0 as a tactics event, you can declare any number of eligible characters as defenders against enemy attack. So Anchor Watch for 2, you can do exhausted characters to defend together, but you can't do as many as you want. You can do up to 1 for the card, or 2 or 3 if you have this in your discard pile. This goes with Noldor cards. I don't know, C tier. It's expensive for what's probably just a good readying effect. You're probably going to ready one of your stronger defenders, so you probably don't need to have multiple defenders here, really. Fine enough, though, C tier. Hold the Line. Leadership event cost 0. As a response, when an enemy attacks a player, that player may declare up to 3 eligible characters as defenders against this attack. Then the players as a group may spend 2 tactics resources to ready each defending character that takes no damage. So if you get enough, you get to then ready them an attack. I like this one better. Hold the Line I have in the B tier. So it's like Stand Together, because while it's limited to 3 defenders instead of unlimited like Stand Together, the 2 tactics resources to get the readying effect, that is more useful. Leadership event, Captain's Wisdom. Cost of 0, resource action. Exhaust a noble hero you control to add 2 resources to that hero's resource pool. So you're trading exhaustion for 2 resources. Now, if you have a noble like Denethor that you don't need to defend, you can have this one at the end of the round to say, oh, I didn't need to defend with them, so let me just get more resources. So it's fine. I like it. B-, B tier. For 1 cost, Terrible to Behold. As a response, after you declare a noble character as a defender against any attack made by an engaged enemy, return that enemy to the staging area. Then cancel the attack. So it's kind of silly that a noble would be terrible to behold, like jumping out of the castle. The guy, I guess they're trained in attacking better if you're a noble. I don't know. Like I said before, I don't like moving enemies into the staging area. Canceling the attack, it would have been better if it just canceled the attack and didn't scare them away. C tier. The Evening Star. For a cost of 2, you place 2 progress on any location, and you resolve that effect again for each copy of the Evening Star currently in your discard pile. You may choose different targets. This is probably my favorite of the repeat the effect for everything in your discard pile cards. I think this is auto-include if you're going with Noldor. A tier. This is also a card where I would even include it in non-Noldor decks. Like, it's an A tier card. It's very good. For a total cost of 6, you could potentially be getting 12 progress on locations in the staging area. We're in the lore, by the way. Arrows from the Trees. They come out of the trees, man! They come out of the trees! For cost of 1, play only after making engagement checks. As an encounter action, if no enemies were engaged this phase, deal 1 damage to each enemy in the staging area. Then the players as a group may spend 3 tactics resources to deal 2 additional damage to each enemy in the staging area. So this one of the better ones with the multiple effect thing, doing 3 damage to every enemy in the staging area could take out a lot of enemies. So I like it for that reason. Probably doing it when your threat is low, where no enemies were engaged, but you have a lot of enemies, and you're doing this with, it doesn't say scouts, but you're doing this with like scouts or rangers or, possibly hobbits. I like this card more than the others. I'm going to say A tier for this card. That's about as high as I can do it for these cards where you spend resources from different spheres to have multiple effects. Heed the Dream.
Don't let your dreams be dreams.
For cost 1 is an event. Action. Choose a player. That player searches the top 5 cards of his deck for a card, adds this to his hand, and then shuffles his deck. Then players of his group may spend 3 leadership resources to have that player search his deck for another card, add to his hand, and shuffle his deck. So this is kind of like gather information, the side quest, which costs 0, but you basically have to use up 4 quest points to search your deck for a card, but you also get the first effect. 3 leadership resources, though, to search for a card. I mean, I don't know. What do you like better? 4 resources or 4 progress to be able to search your deck? And you get the 2 cards here. It is leadership resources. Despite my distaste, I got to put this one at A tier too. My distaste for the multiple resource spending thing. Like, that's a good effect. It's a relatively straightforward way to get whatever card you want. You don't have to take an extra turn like you do with the side quest to get a side quest in play and then quest against it and then defeat it. I would rather spend the resources probably. So yeah, A tier for Heed the Dream. Interrogation. This goes with trap decks. So a 1-cost lore event as an action. Choose an enemy with an attached trap card. Look at the top X cards of the encounter deck where X is that enemy's printed threat. You may discard one of those cards and return the rest to the top of the deck in the same order. This is a cool effect. So if you trap a really high-tiered enemy, you can really see what's coming. I really like looking at what's coming on the encounter deck, especially if you don't have Henemarth Riversong. This can be good. So for cost 1, goes well with traps. We're going to go with A tier here. It's about as good as a card can be that goes in a trap deck. Nah, it's only a B tier. It's in trap decks and you already need a trap attached. And the enemy you don't choose which enemy gets attached. Alright, I lost audio in the middle of interrogation there. Alright, so interrogation, I was going to say, because you don't get to choose who gets attached to, and you can't like choose to have an enemy with printed threat of 3, that is not as good. So I dropped it down to the B tier. So that is fun as it can get for a trap card, but it can't be A tier. The Houses of Healing. So this is the last of the lore events. So this is 5 cost, and you may exhaust any number of healer characters you control as part of this card's cost. Reduce the cost to play this card by 1 for each healer character you exhaust in this way. So it's kind of like a Witcher style ritual or something like that, where they all just bring them back. Maybe a little bit more occultish than I'd like. I mean, I always think they're like in the discard pile, they're dead, but maybe they're not. Anyway, so refresh action, choose a hero in any player's discard pile. Put that hero into play under its owner's control with 1 damage token on it. So comparing this to Fortune or Fate. Both cost 5. Fortune or Fate is spirit. This is lore. Houses of the Healing, you can reduce the cost by exhausting healers. And Houses of the Healing, you can only do it as a refresh action, and you come back with 1 damage. I think it's C tier, although thematically I'd like it as like B tier, but I never planned to have heroes destroyed, so C tier. All right, now the Sphereless events. First, we have Justice Shall Be Done. Limit 1 per deck, and it's 0 cost. As a planning action, add Justice Shall Be Done to the victory display to draw 3 cards and add 3 resources to the resource pool of each hero you control. At the end of the round, you're eliminated from the game. So if you already have a lot of cards, this can be a great way to finish the game. Now, that happens to me a lot, is I will be like in a situation where it's like, I need to win it this round or I will lose. And it happens more often than you'd expect in Lord of the Rings, a card game. This is a very good card for it. It costs 0. That's a fun effect. It's just, the cost is you really have to. Compared to, say, Path of Need, which is also, limit 1 per deck, and you have a special location where you might try to win the game. This is exactly on the nose. A tier. A lot of fun. Thematically pretty cool. It fits the best in Valor decks because you're also running up against like the threat limit a lot. But it's just a fun card to play. And the last card, Vanish from Sight. 0 cost, neutral event, and play only if you control 2 or fewer heroes. There are a lot of cards here too that are cost 0, and they didn't have those early in the game because they didn't realize that cost 0 card still has a cost, and it's the cost of drawing the card in the first place. So some cards should be cost 0, not always cost 1. As an action for Vanish from Sight, until the end of the phase, if your threat is higher than 20, treat your threat as if it is 20. You're using this card either if you went with a 2-hero strategy, which is pretty rare, or in the less likely circumstance, if you lost a hero and you also The reason why you care about Thrav 20 is if you're going secrecy. And if you went 3 heroes, you still could have gone secrecy and then lost a hero later, especially if you like Falco Boffin. So you're more often probably doing it in the 2 hero strategy to get the last use out of all of your secrecy cards. Or potentially avoid engagements if you really need it, but that's going to be more rare. I like the artwork on the card though. I'm pretty sure that's Frodo because it looks like he's holding the ring. C tier for the card, but if you're looking at just the artwork, that's probably A tier for art. Maybe it's even S tier for art because I really like the Nazgul in the background there. C tier for Vanish from Sight. And that's the tier list. I hope you enjoyed that. If you really enjoyed that, you know, I got more of those coming. We're not done with all the Lord of the Rings card game sets. We got more that we got to do tier lists for. And these are quite exhausting. If you want to support the channel, you can buy shirts and stuff like that. I got staging area mats. You can also become a member and just be like getting the credits, you know, and say that forever you supported Jackson's Warfield for a period, or maybe forever. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.